Terry Leverett, in case y'all don't know my name. Yeah, I'm kind of slow. It takes me a little while to learn people's names. If each of you had a number, I could remember it real easy. Okay, any of the people I've sent the handouts to already, were y'all able to look at them or kind of explore the ones I sent out this last week? Did you get them?
I did.
Okay.
What was it?
I sent out handouts to the people that were on the list.
Okay.
I think I forwarded to everybody. It was a lot of different files. Did you get that email from me?
I
It was
probably
like
did.
videos. It was like probably like 10, 15 different files.
I'll have to look.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a cumulative. I just wanted to get it out there. I hope it's not overwhelming. I know that nobody can look at it all at one time. And just as a note, last week I put out a go bag on the table in the dining room, and I've left it out, and we have a couple of more items that weren't there that we brought to look at today. And I realized that prices were on them, that product number and prices were on that stuff, and those prices were from when we did conferences back a couple of years ago. I'm not trying to sell that stuff. I just put it out to provoke thought as far as what each of you might want to include in your bags. At best case scenario, those prices would be out of date anyway. I wouldn't sell those to you. I'd just point you to somewhere where you could get all that stuff. So I wanted to just make that clear. Same thing with the food downstairs that I made available to taste last week. They had prices on it. There again, I'm not trying to sell that stuff. The prices were just there from another time before. And one other thing, did y'all know that there is a group of believers here, network, that are already come together for the purpose of hiding Jews?
Hating Jews?
Hiding.
Oh, okay.
It's a national network. There is a local chapter, and there's going to be, towards the end of May, there's going to be a gathering for that purpose. And anyway, I was asked to speak at it. So, none of y'all had knowledge of that?
No.
Nope.
Yeah, I was amazed.
I mean, is it a
Is
big
it a
network
private
of
thing?
people?
I don't know how big it is. I was just asked to go, and it's kind of hush-hush and incognito, and actually you have to pre-register and sign a 10-point agreement of why they're coming together and the things you agreed to before they'll even give you where they're going to meet or whatever. It's part of it was that not to share your theological agenda, because there's Jews as well as Christians, and they want to make it a welcome environment without belittling anybody's beliefs. So it looked like it was Christian based, but I think they did that just for the purpose of being able to have non-Messianic Jews not feel out of place. So I know I'm called to, through a couple of things that I'm doing to help keep markets open to Israel eventually. And so I was really flattered with the invitation. I'll let y'all, as that unfolds, I'll let you know more about it.
Stephen Burke is coming again?
Say that
Did
again?
you say Stephen Burke is coming again?
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to be there.
Oh, he's gonna be there. Okay.
Yeah.
So is this meeting open to whoever feels they're called to hide Jews, or?
I think it's,
By
no,
invitation?
I asked if a friend of mine could go, and they said yes, it was somebody, a trusted friend. And so I know I could take, I don't want to end up taking the whole group, but I know I can take 2 or 3 people, but not a lot.
So what's, I find that very interesting. What's the thing, the premise is it like in preparation for another Holocaust kind of situation? And how, can you give me background to the reality of that, and what that could look like or anything?
I just got the invitation last weekend. It was Sunday, and so I know nothing.
Yeah.
I know I believe there's gonna be one. I think it's gonna be worse than the original one. I know Mike
Yeah.
believes that and teaches that. Y'all are in a end times group on Monday.
I'm
A couple of us, me and
leading
Vivian,
on-
that's it, from this group.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
specifically looking at end times in Israel.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like an E12, end times, E12 group.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna read just a review, for those of you that have been here before, I'm gonna review a few statements that I gave on the first day, just as a, kind of a common theme. The first one is, the only thing worse than preparing for a disaster that doesn't happen is not preparing for the one that does. Next one is, projected strength brings order, perceived weakness brings chaos. Third, is preparation is about giving yourself the most choices possible to be able to live a life of dignity in adverse situations. Fourth, nothing happens until something happens. Everything needs to be action-based. And last is, when your life is on the line, don't put it on the line with a piece of junk. That's referring to tools, that's referring to weapons, that's referring to anything. That if you are planning for preparation, depending on your time scenario, but if you're planning for anything beyond 3 weeks, then you need to focus on quality. And as we go along, I will emphasize that more and more. So, okay, now I would like to open up the discussion on the video. Jeff, did you watch that American Blackout?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
I've been praying in tongues the whole time.
I watched it twice, again just a little while ago. So who did not watch it?
I
Okay.
kind of watched
Who kind of watched it?
it. Me.
Yeah,
I mean, I sort of had it on while I was cleaning.
while you were doing other stuff?
While I was cleaning, I had it on.
Yeah, okay. So, open it up. What do you want to, so,
Maybe we can recap what the different scenarios are, like in the movie, because it seems like most people didn't watch it. Or should we delete?
no, we had 4 people that didn't watch it, so.
No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, yeah?
Sorry, I didn't watch it.
Oh.
Yeah, they didn't watch it. So I don't know, and then I know like Matt watched it and Caleb watched it. I don't know if we want to discuss it next week, since most people didn't watch it.
We just go through Teresa and all the questions.
I could tell you my thoughts that aren't necessarily, you don't have to be someone that's watched it.
I think if we recap the scenarios, then we can discuss those, but it's so helpful to actually watch it because it's so real.
Yeah, let's watch it.
Yeah, maybe, what do you think? And the
Yeah.
two guys who watched it aren't here, and I think that, like, Matt was texting me throughout while watching it, just all the, because it's so intense, so, I mean, I think there'll be some good discussion, if we maybe postpone it to next week. I don't know.
We can discuss it more than once if we need to.
Okay.
I think, for me, it changed my mind on a few things, and I want to mention that. So, especially watching it the second time, gleaning more out of it. And so, I would like to discuss it somewhat. Maybe it'll challenge y'all to watch it
Yeah.
again. But, okay, the scenario was that there was a cyber attack on the United States, on the technology having to do with the power grid. And so the power grid went down. It looked like it kind of moved across the country. It started in 3 or 4 states and then went further until it engulfed the whole country. And so the movie started with newscasters or what, and giving news that it was a short-term scenario, that they thought that it would be solved soon. And so, I mean, in the beginning, people were outside having little cookout parties. They were cooking their food so it wouldn't go bad in the freezer, and they were kind of having fun with it. And then it started painting more and more drastic scenarios. Like it's day 1, then day 2, and day 3, and
Day 3 is
by day 3, society started really breaking down. I mean, people were fighting over bottles of water at the stores. Looting. But what I didn't get about the movie is there's parts of it that seem a little naive to me. I don't think if that happened. I mean, there was police everywhere. There was the people were on the news, and by day 3 or 4, they were talking about the gas in their generators were running out. But I wanted to pose the question having to do with the movie is, do you think that police would actually show up to work?
No.
Do you actually think soldiers, I mean, they talk about martial law, that actual soldiers on American soil would actually show up to go to work? I mean,
Yes.
I don't think, you think so?
Yes.
Marshall.
I don't know. But
different. When I was in Hurricane Andrew, and it was that way. Very few people did anything for a few days. Like there was just nothing no one could do. Everyone just stayed home. And
So
then
what do you mean by there were no police, but there were?
there was no police really, but there was also no people out. I mean, there was no one could do anything. So you just, but like in Manhattan where you got 7,000 people on one block, it's another story. You know, there's nothing that can stop these 7,000 people from interacting, you know. But down the road, it became, communication was first. Like, that was the big deal. Like, people had to communicate. And people that are ready for these types of things have other forms of communication. So there's like police, doctors, medical community. They've actually been able to communicate through other forms, like outside of cell phone or satellite phone. I don't know what they have, but they literally have something in their room that's ready to talk. You know, like if you have any friends or policemen, they have a radio in their house. They don't use phones. Then it became, okay, you get triple overtime if you come to work today. We really need help. And then they're like, okay, you know, I've had my family prepared. We have supplies. I'm going to go do a 12-hour shift for, you know, $120 an hour or whatever, and they just leave their house and go do it.
I think typically, like, outside people will come in to help. Let's say a crisis hits like New York City, then surrounding cities, the military police will come into those cities, right? Not really the local, because they're kind of in chaos and they don't know what to do. But in that movie, it was basically, it hit all the major cities, right? But not, it wasn't like everywhere, was it? I wasn't quite sure, like the rural areas, were they also impacted? Like, was it like
Well, that's what
nationwide?
That's what they portrayed.
They
Yeah.
portrayed. But it was like not like all of a sudden. It was like every day, like one city would go down.
The value of that movie is not, can the whole country go out in a power outage? It's more, when something bad happens, what happens to society.
What are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
Because the whole thing wasn't accurate. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't explain it all, but the cyber attack was essentially saying, it was telling the computers that monitor the amperage to like throw way more voltage through the lines, which blows the transformer. But in reality, the computer does that and one transformer blows and that whole wet leg has no power. But you only have to replace that one transformer. So out of every station, it goes out like 4 directions it can only blow the first 4 transformers because the rest of them are still good because the electricity never got to them. So all the electric company has to do is replace 4 transformers, and that grid's back up, and it's now not going to get touched by anything else. And so, yeah, every grid has to be worked on, but it would. I don't think the scenario was totally accurate as far as a threat. But what does society do when crazy stuff happens? That's what you need to look at. Yeah, I think that's the value of the movie.
In case history, there was a power outage a number of years ago, and it happened at a plant up by Detroit or something like that. And the East Coast lost power just because of that one plant, and it was a transformer station. The East Coast lost power for almost 2 days, and it was like a huge deal. And you can look it up. I forget when it was. It was a few years ago, maybe 10. And then Katrina, for New Orleans, the police, firemen walked out, didn't help people. There were a few nursing homes. People just left. I mean, they're getting paid, $7 an hour. They wanted to take care of their families, not these people, So hospitals were supposed to be prepared for something like that. In Katrina, people died in hospitals because they didn't have the power went out. Generators on the ground floor usually or in the basements, flooded. They're not working, and so all your emergency services were gone in Katrina. What they started doing was the looting, people going crazy. The Superdome there, I guess some really, people were getting raped and whatever else. And this is just, a number of hours after a catastrophe had occurred. And so you didn't have local police services, so what they did is they called in the National Guard. And the National Guard actually went to the outlying areas, places that weren't hit, and knocked on doors and asked people for their guns. And if you said, well, I don't have any guns, they said, well, we're gonna go check. And they actually started confiscating guns from people that were quite wealthy. So, for whatever reason, but that came down from Federal Emergency Administration, FEMA, Federal, whatever the acronym stands for. And so, case history says that in a localized area, a city area, like where the Katrina hit New Orleans, it was chaos. And even outlying areas that weren't even hit by it were affected by it. In Montana, they were training, where I grew up, they were training military units to come in and basically take over an area, secure it. They had like Black Hawk helicopters. But the thing about it is military units, and that you might call them mercenaries, the soldiers were from places like Russia, or they weren't even American soldiers. And so it's easier to neutralize civilians if you're using soldiers that don't really have any interest in whether or not your well-being's good or not. So, and this is just recent. I mean, I don't know if that makes a difference. So when you ask the question, what police are probably not going to stay on it. I mean, a few will, and then the soldiers will come in. I mean, they want to control the situation. They want to control the populace.
Yeah, I don't know. EMP technology, if that's a real threat, that's another story, because that could be serious. But natural disasters like Katrina can only happen to a local area, And I mean, that's what Andrew was like. Hurricane Andrew was, you had to drive 3 hours to get something, but you still could. It's like people can help. And Katrina was so bad, but it was in that zone that was flooded and everything was gone. I just have a hard time seeing all the country like sinking at once, if that makes sense. I think it's a slow degradation of things that we need to be prepared for.
Yeah, well, I don't think, I mean, look, in the film, even the family that had prepared,
Right.
how naive they were. I question if you can truly prepare for an EMP. I mean, for society, a breakdown of society at the level that was in that film. I mean, even the film was naive, in my opinion, because I don't think anybody'd show up for work if that happened, especially on a whole national level. And if that does happen, it wouldn't be an 11-day ordeal, it would be years. So when we're talking about preparing, I think you have to kind of set your sight lower than that, because I think most scenarios that we would be preparing for would be the slow degradation and things to where you wouldn't be dealing with society breakdown at that level. I think if society breaks down, I mean, for me, it made me realize, I mean, I've bought a lot of preparation stuff, I've had the gardens, I've done a whole lot of things, but nothing in my plans, or even in my plan now, would deal with security on a level that would need to be in that situation. I think the only way that you could truly operate and have security in a situation like that is in a community of like-minded people that had come together over time with things like this in mind. It's like in one of the videos that David Renier does on our website having to do with security, he said, I don't know, a house, like a half acre, I don't know what size he said, but a half acre to an acre lot would take, to truly give 24/7 security, would take 24 people. So I mean, how would you do that? So,
Change your style.
I mean, that is watching the film a second time. That's what it did for me. I wrote a note here that said, I've been naive. I mean, I've really been naive as far as my approach to a lot of things. I've learned a lot of things, like on that 300 acres we had, I learned how to have water, gravity-fed water for a month without power. We had a hill, mountain or hill, whatever you want to call it, that was within 500 feet of our house. And so I put 2 tanks where we had 2,500 gallons of water underground up on a hill. And we just ran a pipe to where we had gravity feed water, 2,500 gallons, which would be enough for us for, a couple of months maybe. For other people, it would last a lot longer than that. But, and I learned a lot of things like that. But if the grid going down for an extended period of time is benchmark, then I've been naive. I mean, I really long and hungered to have a community set apart, and I want us to have a whole, like a Saturday or maybe even several Saturdays that we spend on community and what's our picture of what community would really be. So anyway, that was the net results of watching that film. Even the preppers, the guys that had prepared, left themselves vulnerable on many areas. Yeah.
I was going to share that if you guys remember, like 2 weeks ago, that was my biggest concern was security.
Yeah.
And the Lord gave me my answer because I was really praying about that. And it was really cool because watching that movie is kind of what sparked, like, I really need to know what to do. And the answer for me is going to be dogs. Because my setup is going to be like an orphanage. It's going to already have community. It's going to have host families with kids. And so there's going to be lots of families. There'll be, I imagine there being at least 6, 7, 8 men and their families. So we're going to have community there already. But how many guns can you wield and how many people can you fend off, especially in a place like how I envision mine, which has a wall, it's in a city, it says, come get me, there's food. And the Lord gave me dogs. And in the meantime, almost all of my plans have a immediate benefit, like, you know, you can sell food and have, you know, have a producing farm now, and then later it'll save your life, that kind of a thing. And so I was realizing we can breed German Shepherds and make money now by breeding dogs, and then people walk up to my wall and they hear 12 full-grown German Shepherds barking like crazy. You know, that ain't worth messing with. Even if you have guns, you're not going to go against a pack of dogs. And it'll serve the kids and loving animals. And so I talked to my partner about this, and I say, I've got the idea, I've got the solution for security. And you know what she tells me? She says, my son is just graduating school right now with his criminal justice degree, and he specializes in canines. And that's what his, like, trajectory in life is to work with German Shepherds. How awesome is that? And so that's what the Lord.
What kind of wall do you have?
It's going to be a rammed earth wall. It's like a 2-foot wide, basically dirt. And
You're gonna put that all the way around 4 acres?
Maybe. It depends. My vision is to go bigger than that and to include my neighbors, because I've got like 7 houses down the side. Depending
I
on how
wonder-
many people are in the community, I'll just go around all the houses. and do
City
that.
code gonna let you do that?
No, this would be like later. With the rammed earth,
Right.
all you need is a pile of dirt and a few bags of concrete, and you can go to town and you can build a wall in a few days.
All you
So-
need with a few dogs is a couple of bullets.
Not with dogs running after you. Maybe one dog.
You know, I'm just saying.
Semi-automatic against one dog, yeah, you know, you got it. But 12 full-grown German Shepherds.
That'll be a deterrent
I mean, that's-
noise-wise. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's the answer. I think that's it's like a multi-faceted answer, because the kids have dogs to bond with, and the kids learn how to be an assertive leader as a child, and the kids are armed. The kids can walk around fully armed and dangerous with a full-grown German Shepherd that loves that kid, and I mean, I'm great. Go out, you know. Weapons come with so many problems, especially if you're talking about having lots of kids around. And it just made so much sense. It's like, that's a great answer. And you make money, you know, breeding them in the meantime. So let's
Okay.
throw that out there.
Yeah, Grace and I used to raise, we used to raise Rottweilers.
Nice.
Yeah, I love them.
I like them too, but they are slobbery.
You think a German Shepherd's not?
Not as much as a Rottweiler.
I
Just
think-
walk around with big gobs hanging
No,
down.
no.
Not-
No,
I
any
guess it
big
depends
dog,
on-
any big dog is gonna have
Yeah.
big slobber. That's just part of it. At least not like that movie, that Bulldog was
Beethoven.
in. What was that?
Oh, I was thinking Beethoven, the big.
Red.
Yeah, hooch.
Yeah.
Hooch,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, that was nasty. That was nasty. Well, for me, the community, the Lord's called me to, and that I want to be part of, is not in the city, it's outside the city. And it's, I gave y'all the vision Lord gave me for a community. It doesn't have to be that far out of the city, but it's set apart, and it's where you would be able to know who's supposed to be there and who's not supposed to be there. And actually, the setting for the community is like 9 square miles. It's like close to 6,000 acres with 150 to 200 families in it. And I really want to actually start walking that out. All right.
Do you
next.
have a location for that at this point, like your eye on or anything, or is that just kind of?
The first one, yeah. I mean, we have some land about an hour out of town, and a house. We found out about it back in the summer of 2010. We received an email from a person that was in Egypt at the time, telling us about the land. And one thing led to another, and we ended up getting it. The house, a house in 20 acres, had a 4-acre pond, lake that was 40 feet deep, and it's got its own natural gas well for backup.
So you have that now?
Yeah.
So you're kind of like the prepper people in the movie, kind of like you'll piece out on this place and you'll go there.
Don't know. I mean, the Lord had told me to have all three places prepared with alternative energy and communication. This house, our warehouse, and the place down south. There's a purpose for each, and I can't tell you. I'd have to know the scenario to say which direction I'd go in. When the Lord gave us this house, He said this house would be like Camp David, and that we needed to have a war room with really good alternative communication. And I mean, He didn't go into details. I don't have the details of that, but I mean, Camp David is a place where high-level meetings are for the purpose of leadership, and it's a place really that has brought a lot of peace treaties into being, and it's brought peace to many situations. So, I mean, I can read into that and what I would like the definition of that to be, but so I don't know. If depending on where I was at the time, I think if the power grid went down, I wouldn't want to necessarily ride it out here. I'd either go to the cave or to down south to the other property. But anyway, the Lord told me that that place, that area down there, would be the first of the Goshen properties He showed me. But there again, like I've said this before, though, He didn't send a bank wire to pay for everything He said that there would be. So we're all limited in one way, and the main factors the Lord limits us is time and money. Generally, if you have time, you don't have the money, and if you have the money, you don't have the time to do some of the things the Lord puts on your heart. So, or energy. Energy's another. There's three factors. Any more comments you want to talk about on the on that video?
I mean, for me, I don't know if we should wait till next week. Just talking about the prepper family and what happened when the neighbors came and just giving away food. Because for me, like storing up food, I always knew it wasn't for self-preservation, but it's really to help and save others. But in that scenario, what do you do when people come to you for food and, you know, just exactly what happened in that scenario? I don't know if we should wait till next week after more people have watched it.
We can bring it up
I
again
mean,
next week.
What was that?
We can talk about it a little bit now. And bring it
Yeah,
up next
like
week.
that really just, I was just conflicted thinking about it. I don't know what I would do. I mean, I can't really turn away people like children, women and children, watch them starve when I know I have a whole, you know, storage area full of food. I mean, I just can't do that with a clear conscience, and I don't really think that's God's heart. But at the same time, with wisdom, if you start giving one person food, everyone else is going to come, hundreds and thousands, and your supply will be depleted in a matter of days, right? So, what to do in that kind of situation? I think that really, that part of the movie really just had me wondering what I would do, and I really don't know what I would do. So.
My thought was, because the neighbor comes over, hey, I'm your neighbor, I've got a family. And the guy's like, we have no food for you, we can't. And the guy was like overly, you know, they pigeonholed him as like the militaristic, telling his wife what to do and barking orders at his family. So he was kind of extreme, but he was like, we have no food for you, sir. But then the kid, the girl's boyfriend, the daughter's boyfriend who happened to tag along, was like, well, there's food, and he opened his mouth. And so then they knew. So then they did a deal in the middle of the night. He gave them some food, and then the next day got all of his friends, and 20 guys come over raiding the house.
Oh, man.
What hit me, and then they took the little boy by hostage at night, and they stole their food. And then when they hid in the bunker, they came back with more guys, and it didn't end. The idea is this is not going to end until the guy's got a knife at his throat, and the guy's about to die.
Well, the guy in the bunker,
He was dumb to go out there.
Well, no. number one, he didn't prepare right. He left his water supply and his fuel supply above ground in the house that he abandoned to go down into the underground. That stuff should have been buried if you got a bunker that you're gonna go to be safe, and you supposedly have 2 years worth of supplies. That other stuff needs to be underground and feed directly into it so you don't have to come out.
Right.
And there's
But-
like no fencing or anything, right, around the property?
There's barbed wire.
Oh, there was barbed wire, okay.
Yeah, but I mean.
My thought, what I would have done, like just my play through, you know, when I went through that scenario, is I would have said, because if I've got 2 years of food, to me, the preparation plan is get your 2 years, but you start growing and gardening and being self-sufficient on that land. If you've got that, if you're in the city, it's different, but if you've got that, grow and live on it. So my plan would have been, if you want to join us, come live with us, take your whole family and come with us. That way, one, he has no way to tell anybody else because he can't leave. Like, you just make the deal. You have to stay with us and live with us. You can't go, ever, like until this is over. And then they
And
can
work,
choose.
and work, right.
I'll live with you, I'll stay, I'll work with you, we'll start planting, we'll start surviving. And you can increase, okay, we're gonna plant more, you know, and with seeds, you just know, and if you've got that kind of land, you can support all kinds of people. So that would have taken that problem out of the equation in my mind. And just, the only answer to me, if I was in his shoes, is either bring them on to be a team, and even if it takes another group and another group, bring an RV or tent, whatever, and now all of a sudden you've got 7 families, and you all of a sudden now have strength, so your security becomes minimized and your feeding problem becomes greater, so then you have more problems to solve, but that can be done over time, not, the security is like problem now. The food is like, if I've got 2 years of food, I'm not gonna run into that problem for a while. I would have said, deal with the security immediate problem now, and that is getting more people on your compound. I mean, what else can you do? You can't do what he did. That's just, you can't do that. You can't just let people
No,
know.
but a community could.
Community, yeah.
If you've
And that
got-
was his problem. It's interesting, I got an email today from the the Womack brothers, which do another survivalist.com, I think. And their latest push to a conference is all about community. And, you know, their advertisement was, forget the bunker mentality, we need to rebuild communities in America. And it's the first time I ever saw that. It's always been about pushing products and selling, and now they're pushing the community. Just today, actually. It's interesting.
I just happened to flash on something. Are y'all familiar with the Blueprint Prophecies?
No.
Okay, are you part of IHOP? Have you been around IHOP some?
I just moved here in June.
We ought to read the Blueprint Prophecies. Are y'all familiar with them? I mean, you know what it says?
Not the details, but
Yeah, I don't know the detail here.
Well, there's a part in there that says that, and the Blueprint Prophecies, I think is speaking to Mike. It said that he would minister from outside the city, from a place of preparation, before the city lays desolate.
Before what?
Before the city lays desolate, before the city is
Oh, so Mike is gonna be in another
outside,
place,
somewhere outside the city,
broadcasting.
from a place of preparation, before the city lays desolate. It's part of the Blueprint Prophecy.
Outside the city being Kansas City,
Grandview?
Grandview.
I don't know what that means. It said from a place of preparation is actually the words in the prophecy. And it goes on to say that Mike didn't have to worry about having the knowledge of preparation, that those that do would come and join him and bring the knowledge to him. So, I mean, that to me says from outside the city, a place of preparation is not just a place for a disaster scenario. For me, that is a sustainable platform. And so that, I came upon the Blueprint Prophecies back in 2004 when we first came here. And I would, and of course, we don't get to see the whole version, and part of the ones that, the version of the Blueprint Prophecies that are made available are ones that have part of it kept private. Or that, to my knowledge, I've never seen the whole thing. I think you can actually see a version of it off the website. The IHOP website.
The prophetic history.
But the part I read, it says to me, outside the city. Because at some point, the city's going to lay barren. It's going to lay desolate.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, what does desolate actually mean? Can you look it up on your phone or something and get a
Definition.
Webster definition of desolate?
Lacking the people, plants, animals, etc. that make people feel welcome in the place. Very sad and lonely, especially because someone you love has died.
That's the definition of desolate?
That's what it says, adjective, and then it says full definition, devoid of inhabitants and visitors, joyless, disconsolate, and sorrowful through, or as if through separation from a loved one, showing the effects of abandonment and neglect, devoid of warmth, comfort, and hope.
Well, maybe once y'all read like if you look it up and read it, you can prove me wrong. Maybe I took it out of context or whatever, but what I said is in there. And so when we first came here, we came from a place of preparation in Arkansas. I mean, I clearly, on the way home from our, I don't know if it's our first or second trip. Okay. We came in May of '04 and came to a Joseph conference, and we were just here for 3 days. And then in the middle of summer, July or August of '04, we came back for a Joseph retreat that was week long. We were here for 2 weeks. And we were listening to the Encounter Jesus CDs on the way back, and when it got to the end of, I believe it was tape 3, where Mike's talking about the extravagant giving to the poor and the transfer of wealth, that I clearly just heard Lord say that Grace and I would help bring that to Kansas City. So when we were, no, that was on the way home from the first trip. And then when we came back for the second trip, we met with Mike and told him that, and he just stood up and embraced us and said, "Welcome home." And that's kind of how we got started here. But that part of the Blueprint Prophecy was part of what I think that Grace and I will be working with the IHOP community in some capacity with that. So I have couldn't help but think that part of the community that I think the Lord's going to have us starting is going to have something to do with IHOP. Not be part of IHOP, but work with IHOP. So that's just always been my thoughts. Now back to your thing about food. I mean, yeah, that's something you just have to settle. I think if if the young man that was with that family had never really piped up and said anything, that it wouldn't have been as big an issue as far as the confrontation goes.
Well, if he had no conscience about it, then what would have been smart is for him to lie to the guy and say, "Do you have food? I got a family. I got 3 kids. We're starving. Do you have anything?" Like, that's what you do if you're gonna be that way. You don't, "We have nothing for you," and pull a gun on the guy. Like, I mean, it made no sense. And the way they wrote the movie, they really they had an agenda of making the prepper look bad. They really did. They had an agenda of saying, prep all you want, you'll be in worse position than everybody else, you know, or the same position, I guess, in every scenario if someone died or was in trouble on some level. But yeah, I think their agenda was saying, prep all you want, you're not any better.
Yeah, I don't think in any scenario you can save the world, though, so that's the whole premise of ask how many people for how long. I mean, for those of you that's your first time here, that is the number one thing you need to do if you're starting to prepare is ask the Lord, if you're a praying person, how many people and for how long am I preparing? You really can't do a whole lot with any bit of integrity or completion if you have not answered that question.
There is a slight added thing to that, though. I mean, I don't know how you feel about. We never had a really conversation about this, but my vision is to develop something where you live off the land, and that changes the equation somewhat because then it's limited to your land, how much growable land. Because every person that comes in can work and earn their keep, but how much space do you have to grow food and how many resources do you have, how much water, how much everything. I mean, the equation turns into...
It doesn't change the simplicity of how many for how long, though, because just because you can grow food doesn't necessarily give you everything else you need.
Well, the how long is irrelevant because you're supposed to be able to do it in
No.
perpetuity.
Well, that just takes care of the food element, you know.
And it doesn't take care of all the food. I mean, what do you do during the winter? Do you have a root cellar? Do you not? I mean, you still have to know how long, because if all you're doing is preparing for 3 weeks or 3 months, you don't need sustainability. You don't, I mean, because it's easy to prepare for those short scenarios.
Right.
If that's your window, if that's really what you're focused in is your purpose.
I got you.
Once you go a year or beyond, you need some kind of sustainable scenario. And so then you're talking about land, you're talking about seed, you're talking about more than just storing something in your basement. And if you go beyond 2 years, then you're really talking sustainable because a lot of things won't last longer than that, like oils
You're talking
and so
permanent.
on. But, I mean, any scenario beyond 3 months, you need to be talking about a seed strategy. Whether you're growing in your basement, I mean, there's things, I showed some videos last week of a way you can grow vegetables ongoing in your basement without sunlight. I mean, you can do it incognito, but you definitely have to have seed and a variety of seed and a seed strategy. So I say no matter what your scenario, even in a community, you still have to answer the question of how many people for how long. For Grace and I, when we lived on the 300 acres in Arkansas, we grew all of our own food, I'd say 90%, because we'd go out to eat and splurge here and there. But we had water 6 ways, we had enough fuel to run our generators for 2 years. I mean, we had a really good scenario there. We lived on a river, really clean, kind of a mountain creek, kind of a river, but our scenario, our window we looked through then was for 2 people, 20 people for 2 years. But since then, about 3 or 4 years ago, the Lord changed that to 10 people for 3.5 years. And the difference between the 2 years and the 3.5 years, you have to change strategy a lot on things you store, because a lot of things just won't last that long.
I got a new item for your creative, like the way you did the acid instead of the vinegar, you got the acid.
Yeah.
I found out about pool shock. You heard about that? Because bleach, is watered down pool shock. Because there's so much bleach or so much chlorine in pools, no one buys bleach chlorine and dumps in their pool because they'd have to have buckets and buckets of it. So the pool shock is literally concentrated bleach So they say that you can take, I mean, it's like a tablespoon of pool shock to a gallon, and you've got your household bleach.
Oh, it's a lot less than that,
Something
yes.
like that. Yeah, I saw it on the internet.
And pool shock is it's like a powder flake. It's kind of like potato flakes. And it's a stable substance. It will last years. Where bleach in a bottle, it dissipates quickly. I mean, a year after you buy it, it's only at half strength. And so you really can't count on it lasting a long time, where if you get the pool shock again, and that's something I could give you a link to Amazon, which is a good source. Sometimes Sam's or Costco have it in 5-gallon containers, but they didn't last time I looked.
Have you watched
Yeah.
Doomsday Preppers? That show?
Oh, yeah, there's some nutcases in there.
Yeah.
They give a preparation a bad name, you know.
Really? I glean a lot of ideas. I mean, it's crazy
I do too.
what they do. It's to the very extreme, but it's interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
there's
We've
really
learned some
people out there
stuff.
doing it.
We've learned some stuff. There's one case, like, here's a tip that is cool. Y'all want to make a note of this. Did you know that you can take mineral oil and coat it on the outside of an egg?
Oh yeah,
And
I watched that episode.
keep the egg in your basement for a year without refrigeration.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wasn't that episode with that gourmet, the lady who
Is
did all the
mineral-
gourmet cooking?
Is
Yeah.
mineral
With the
oil,
crab foods.
like edible?
Yes,
It is? That's cool.
it makes you poop right.
Which way?
Yeah, it's kind of castor oil, mineral. Yeah, ever since I was a kid, my ears put off too much earwax, and so to keep it in check, a lot of times I use mineral oil in my ears. Ever since I was 6 months old. But anyway, it's a really fine oil. I think is when it's used on eggs. Something else. Did you know you can get cheese wax? You can get a big block of cheese wax for like $5, and you can, if you buy a bulk cheese, you can put it in whatever size blocks you want and coat it in cheese wax and keep it for years in your basement without refrigeration.
Put cheese in cheese wax? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Just coat it with cheese wax. I don't know if y'all like cheese. Cheese, we love it.
It's so expensive. Oh, man. Although
Well,
I've never
depending on what
seen it.
kind. I mean, at Restaurant Depot, you can get 5 pounds of sharp cheddar for $13. By the way, if y'all are not familiar with Restaurant Depot, you really can go there and get have you been there?
No, but you told us that last.
Yeah,
Yeah, I need to get a membership.
yes. Membership's free, but I
You
mean,
just
you
have
can.
to have a company, like a EIN number, right?
Right. Well, right, but like if you get one, you can get 4 cards for your company,
Oh.
and so you could help some other people with it,
Okay.
or you
I
can
don't
just
mind riding with someone either.
you can just share. I gave you a card.
Yeah. So I can go with whoever wants to go.
Well, I mean, and you can take others with you, and then they just pass your card to whoever's checking out. But it'll give you a new idea of what the real cost of food is. I mean, it's just amazing. Some of the stuff. You have to know what you're buying. Because,
Right.
But I mean, for instance, flatware, plastic flatware. You get a box of 1,000 forks for $5.
Wow.
What? That's much
Seriously,
cheaper than Costco.
IHOP should go there.
Much cheaper.
I mean, you
Yeah,
can get
it's true.
spoons or knives. You can get 1,000 of each for $15. And I mean, that's
I never
just
told them about that.
that's just
Restaurant
one
Depot.
that's
There's
just one item.
Like Overland Park. I mean, where's
No.
it?